If you have a constantly running toilet, I'm going to show you how to fix it in this quick video. In this video, we're going to replace this flush valve, and I'm going to take you step by step on how to replace it. As you can see, this toilet is running very little, but it's enough to trigger a flush here and there, and that's going to waste water, and we want to fix that. With a constantly running toilet, it can only be two things. One of them is the flapper that you see here, which is very easy to install, and I do have a link in the description, so you could start with the flapper, or it could be the flush valve itself. So let's get it going. Don't forget to subscribe and check out the product links in the description. So originally I did replace the flapper, it was still running, but this kit comes with a flapper and everything you need. Originally when I replaced my flapper, I tested it with the toilet paper, putting it up to the rim of the toilet, and it was still leaking, so I knew that I had to replace the flush valve. And in order to do that, we have to shut off the water, but unfortunately this water shut off here, after many years of corrosion, doesn't work. I had to actually go to the main shut off of the house in order to turn off the water to the toilet, and as you can see here, the water did stop. And now we can go ahead and proceed to remove the tank itself. Over the years, these shutoffs become corroded, and you can go ahead and try to turn off the water, shut off the water, and it just won't. So you need to go to the main shutoff of your house and turn it off that way. So one thing you want to do here that I didn't do is make sure that you flush the toilet and there's no actual water in the tank. As you can see, I was about to remove that hose and the tank is full. So flush the tank before you start removing the hoses, or you're going to have a mess like I did. So make sure you flush the tank, have a bucket in handy, some rags, before you start doing this job. It's a very simple job to do. It's just a little time consuming, and just make sure you do the prep work before you start taking the tank apart. So I'm just letting the rest of the water from the tank and from the pipes itself drain into that bucket. Once all the water is drained into the bucket, we're going to go ahead and pull the tank out. I also turn on the faucet just to alleviate some of that pressure and remove some of that water from the pipes. Now we can go ahead and proceed to remove the bolts that hold the tank together to the base. And when you remove these nuts, you want to make sure you turn them towards you. And this one here wasn't too bad, but some of these over the years are going to be rusted, corroded, and it's going to be hard to get that nut out. And you could spray a little WD-40 like I'm going to do here in order to loosen up all that gunk and all that rust, in order to loosen it up, and hopefully it's going to be easier. One mistake I did here is I was trying to turn that nut the wrong way. When you turn the nut, you want to turn it towards you, not away from you. And you can see I'm hitting it away from me, and it's not going to work until I finally realized that you want to turn it towards you. So once I finally realized that, I just tapped it with a screwdriver after hitting it with that WD-40. And you can see how all that rust and all that gunk is just coming out of there. And I also used a wrench to hold the actual bolt in place while I removed the nut, and that kind of did the trick. So you might have to fight with this. Like I said, the toilet has been sitting there for years. These bolts and the shutoffs, they rust, they get corroded, so that's what you have to deal with. So I was able to remove the nut. The next thing I'm going to do is go ahead and pull that tank away from the base, like I'm doing here, and you just got to lift it up and pull it away. And I'm going to come back and clean all of this, but the most important thing is that we got that tank out, and that we also really cleaned this base, because there is a rubber gasket that's going to sit between the base and the tank, and that's going to make it so it doesn't leak water into the toilet itself. So it's important that we clean this very well in order for that rubber gasket to make the proper seal. You can see here the old gasket is pretty worn out, and that's probably where the water was coming from, either that gasket or the top gasket. So after we remove that gasket, there is a plastic nut here that we have to remove, and it's very easy to remove. And once you remove that, the whole flush valve comes out. So these things here, the rubber gaskets, sometimes they go after many years of use, and that's where you get the leaks from the tank to the toilet. So you notice these bolts are still here in the tank. Once we removed the previous nuts, that was just to remove it from the base. Now we actually got to remove the nuts on the tank itself. So that's what I'm doing. Now if the bolts in your tank are good, you can actually leave them there. I just decided to remove them because the kit comes with new bolts. So I figured, let's put new washers, let's put new nuts and new bolts. So that's what I'm doing. I'm removing the bolts from the tank. If you feel like your bolts are okay and you don't want to go through this step, you don't have to do it. But this is very easy to do. It's just basically removing another nut and a few washers. So now we're going to go ahead and replace the old stuff, the old gasket and the old flush valve with the new one. And again, once you replace these gaskets, you want to make sure that you clean the toilet really well so the gasket could go ahead and seal up against the tank. If it's dirty, it doesn't make a proper seal, it might leak again. So make sure you get rid of all those minerals, all that dirt, all that gunk, so the gaskets can seal up against those holes and you're not going to have any leaks. Once the tank is nice and clean, I'm going to go ahead and add the bolts that came with the flush kit. And I removed the previous bolts because they were all rusted, so I'm going to go ahead and add the new ones that came with the flush kit, as you can see. And it's very easy to do. You feed the bolt through, and then you have 2 black rubber gaskets, you have a washer, and then you have a nut. So you're basically going to go ahead and put the bolts back the way they were. Once you have the bolts in place, you want to go ahead and tighten the nut. And when you do that, you want to make sure that you don't over tighten. You don't want that black gasket to be too tight. You want a good seal, but you don't want it to be too tight. So don't over tighten it. Make sure the gasket is there. You have a good seal. You don't want it to leak water through these bolts. That's the last thing you want to do. So go ahead and do it right. Check your work and just take your time to make sure you're doing this properly. I have a diagram here on how these bolts should go. So if you have any questions or you need to know how they go, you can see on the diagram exactly how I installed the bolts. And these are the bolts that are going to hold the actual toilet tank to the toilet base. Very easy to do. You can do this with some time and some patience. So now I'm going to go ahead and put the flush valve through. You can see the threads for the flush valve. We're going to go ahead and hold it in place with this plastic nut here. You can see the flush valve from the top, and you notice that it does come with a flapper. Once the flush valve is held in place by that plastic nut, it's time to go ahead and slip on that rubber gasket, and that's what's going to make the seal between the tank and the toilet base. Again, make sure you clean the base so the gasket makes a good tight seal. So go ahead and carefully and slowly place the tank onto the toilet base itself, and you want to go ahead and make sure those bolts go through the holes. Once they go through the holes, you want to make sure that the tank itself is nice and leveled. Now you want to make sure you tighten those nuts to the bolt itself so it holds the tank to the toilet base. Just like I have here, you're going to go ahead and connect your main water supply to the tank. Once that's done, double check to make sure your tank is leveled, and then all that's left is to go ahead and connect the flapper to the flush valve itself, like I'm doing here. You might have to adjust the chain on the flapper itself, so you can go ahead and do that so the flapper makes a good seal as well. So you want to go ahead and test this with the cover off, like I'm doing here. I have turned on the water and let the tank fill, and now I'm ready to test this. Now I did take a piece of toilet paper, put it around the tank again, and as you can see, it's not getting wet, which means that it's not running. But we'll go ahead and flush this and test it and see what happens. So we're going to flush it, let it drain out, and I'm going to place that toilet paper again around the toilet to see if it gets wet or not. And now that the tank is slowly filling up, you can see that it's going to stop running, and there it goes. And if I place the toilet paper around there, it's not getting wet anymore, which tells me that it stopped running and everything is working correctly. And with the toilet not running anymore, hopefully it saves you some money. Now, I'm going to leave you with the instructions here at the end. If you need to go back and look at these instructions, go ahead and pause the video. Check out the description for the products that I use for the flapper and the flush valve. I'll have links there. I hope this video has been helpful. If it has, leave a comment, put a like, subscribe for more videos, and we'll see you on the next one.